Dear viewers, welcome to this episode of Your Life, Your Money. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about 10 points you have to focus on to check why you are unhappy with your investment return, just in case you belong to that one group of persons who say we are not getting the desired results. Every point I'm going to talk in this video is very important. Stay till the end, understand this concept and create happiness in your investment activity. This is NRI Money Clinic for you, and I am Dr. Chandrakant, but your financial guide for a happy living.
NRI Money Clinic. No hype, just the right advice.
Dear viewers, people who complain that they are not getting the required amount of returns from their investment activity is not a small one. There are countless people. In fact, there are a lot of people who keep complaining that they are not getting the required investment returns from their investment activity. What are the things you should look at if this is the case? I have brought to you here 10 points. Let's look at each one of them point by point. Point number 1. Why are you unhappy? Have you set up an expectation from your investment activity how much return you should get? This expectation should be reasonable. People start investing and say, I should get 20%, 15%, 25%. They put a fancy number. Such numbers will definitely not work. Any expectations you put of investment return should have a rationale behind it. How did you arrive at this figure? Is it logical? Is it reasonable? The first expectation I would say for you to follow is, number 1, do not expect highest return, which is not possible. Instead, expect an optimal return, which is possible for each and everyone. Likewise, set up an expectation which is measurable. For example, if you say I should get highest return, it has no numbers with it. If you say 15%, you don't have a rationale behind it. Let's look at this problem in a different way. Now, let us say that you have an opportunity cost, which is your bank FD rate. You have your money, you can park it in the bank, and the bank gives you a rate of return. Now, if you set up your expectation that I should get so much over and above the bank rate, then it becomes a rational approach and you have a measurable figure to work on it. See, the bank rate is not fixed in vacuum. The bank rates are fixed as per a rationale. So the bank rate has to be 1% above the inflation rate. So inflation is 5%, the bank rate has to be 6%. Whether it is fixed that way or not, we cannot tell all the time. But generally, this is the principle. So your investment return, what you get is invariably in line with the inflation or 1% over and above the inflation if you park your money in the bank. Suppose if you get 3 to 6% over and above the bank rate, then you should feel very happy. The bank rates are dynamic. Likewise, your investment returns will also be dynamic. It's not static. It's not something you say that I invest in stock market and I must get 15%. You are entitled to say that, but it will not happen. If you peg it against the bank FD and say this should be the alpha, I should get so much over and above that without taking so much of a risk or without taking the maximum risk, then it is a working formula. Now let's look at the example here. If the bank is giving you 6% rate of return, and let's say you peg your returns at 3 to 6% over and above the bank rate, then if the bank FD rate is 6, your portfolio should give you 9 to 12%, 9 on the lower side, 12% on the upside, then it is a possible number to achieve. So set your expectation right. If you are unhappy, find out where the unhappiness comes from. It is just because you have pegged your numbers without a rationale. Then it's time for you to go back and set up your expectation the right way. In Indian context, setting up an expectation of 3 to 6% looks achievable from the data that I have researched on during the last 30-35 years. It's perfectly possible. If the bank interest rates move up, this pegged rate will also move up. Let's say the bank FD rate become 8%, then your expectations will move from 9% to minimum of 11% to upper band of 14%. So peg it against the bank FD rate, put an alpha number, which is how much should be more than that, then it is possible for you to achieve that. Point number 2, you see a great return or you see a not so happy return from your investment portfolio. The point to check here is, when did you start your investment? If you started recently and markets have not done anything in the interim, then your portfolio may show a lackluster performance. The funds in which you are invested may show a great return when you look on the Google or on a money control, or you go to the websites of the company, they say they are giving a great return, but in your portfolio it will not show. That's because when you invested, post your investment, markets are going through a period of lull and they have not performed. The published data, what you are seeing, is taking into account things which have happened before you start investing. So your date of investment is very important. Likewise, in some of the cases, what happens is that you started investing today and suddenly the market went through a spike up. Your expectation was 10-15%, but your portfolio is showing, or the individual funds could be showing 30%, 40%, 50%, any figure is possible. That's because you entered the market and the markets went through a spike phase. So it's all possible. So you entered market going through a spike up phase, or market going through a lull phase, or you entered and the markets corrected, or market going through a creep up phase. Your date of entry dictates what you are going to see in your portfolio return. Over longer periods of time, say 5, 7, 8, 10 years, they will stabilize and they'll start showing a common rate of return. Till such time, it will be very dynamic, it will be very volatile. You may feel super happy, you may feel super unhappy. All things are possible. If you are not invested for more than 3 years, it's not something for you to be too much worried about. Point number 3, which you have to check, is how did you set up your asset allocation? Asset allocation is a very broad term. How do you distribute your investable resources into different asset classes? Could be equity, debt, commodities, gold, whatever it is, or within the equity, how do you distribute your assets between a large cap, small cap, sector funds, micro cap funds, and all these things. This will also dictate what kind of a return you are likely to get. See, sometimes what happens is that the large caps will languish, like what it is happening right now. Because the focus of the market is on the mid and the small caps, the large caps are not showing that kind of a return in the recent past. But prior to that, the small and the mid caps were languishing. Small and mid caps will go through the roof because their supply is very limited. Even the smallest purchase which comes into that will result in a very high rate of return. You check through in your portfolio how your asset allocation is positioned. If you have put 100% of your money in small cap or mid cap, chances are that it may not show you any return, or chances are that it is giving you a superlative return. But going forward, when these sectors will go through a particular problem, then you will start, your unhappiness starts at that point of time. It is very essential that you set up your asset allocation right. See, the key to happiness is setting the right asset allocation. That's the most difficult part of investing exercise. Once you set up your asset allocation, then you should give time to work and it will happen on its own. Point number 4, before you feel happy or before you feel unhappy with your investment return, you must understand how the stock market works. Stock market will not work like your bank FD. You may see a fund giving 15% CAGR returns over last 10 years. It does not mean that it has given 10% every year. No. It's the average of last 10 years. See, for example, if a fund is not doing anything for, let's say, 8 years, and in the last 2 years, it gave 50% in each of the years, then the fund performance show that it has given 100% in the last 10 years, which means it gives a 10% rate of return. But it is not giving you every year 10%. What about those investors who remained invested in this fund for the first 8 years? It's just like a cricket match. Sometimes you know what happens? The match starts and in the initial overs, the opening batsmen will score great runs. The run rate shows 20 runs per over and you feel very happy. Then the spinners come on or the field gets spread out and then the run rate falls down. Because you have scored high runs in the beginning overs doesn't mean that the same thing will continue all throughout. So after that initial high scoring overs, and if there are maiden overs in between or if the run rate gets slowed down, the measuring of run rate of that innings takes into account both the phases, the high scoring period and the period which is not there. Likewise, there are matches where teams will play and till probably the last fag overs, their run rate is very slow. And suddenly the closing batsmen will come and they'll hit sixes and the run rate will suddenly jump. That's exactly what happens in the stock market. Your measurement of returns is an average of the spikes the markets go through, the periods of lull the markets go through, the periods of fall the markets go through. If you do not understand this dynamics of how markets work, you will never be happy in the marketplace. Point number 5, the reason for your unhappiness, is it your portfolio returns or is it your individual funds return? If you have built a portfolio yourself, or if your financial planner has given you a portfolio taking into account several factors, like he has parked some debt funds into it, some hybrids into it, some equity funds, some contra calls and other things. Always remember, you should track your portfolio performance. It is sum of parts. It's not individual parts measurement. See, when a portfolio is built, remember, right from day one, all funds will not perform the same day. Each fund performs in a different way under different market conditions. See, for example, if interest rates are very low, then the equity may do very well. If the large caps are in focus, the large cap funds may do very well. If it is time for the mid and the small caps, the mid and the small caps might be shining very well. So gold does not perform all the time. Commodities does not perform all the time. So if you have built a portfolio, the sections of the portfolio will go through that bull phase at periodical period of time. So just because one sector is giving you a great return, or if one asset is giving you a great return, do not overload your portfolio with only that. Why? Because after some time, the same sector or the same funds may fall out of the grace and your portfolio may languish. So remember, always see the sum of parts. Either learn the art of building a portfolio or ask your financial planner how the portfolio has been built, what is the rationale behind it. Ask them, what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong, but don't complain on individual funds. A fund which is not performing today could be the best performing fund over a period of time. If you look at the star ratings, if you look at the Google ratings, these are very dynamic. What is there today may not remain after 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. That's perfectly normal. That's why I always say, do not look at the stars a fund has got and base your decisions on these star ratings. That's a rear view mirror. That's what has happened in the past. That's not a guide to say what is going to happen in the future. Point number 6. Has your portfolio stabilized? This is an important question to ask. See, when you start, it's again, I'll go back to the cricketing parlance. In the beginning, your run rates have not stabilized. It could be very low, but it may move up later on, or it could be very high, which may come down because of the slow scoring overs subsequently. But there is a period of time which will come. Let's say that you have crossed 30, 40 overs in a 50 overs match, then probably the run rate has stabilized. So you can inch it up very slowly beyond that point, or it has fallen into a particular band. Likewise, your portfolio will also stabilize over a period of time. Normally, it takes about 3 to 7 years for your portfolios to stabilize in a particular band. That's perfectly possible. Prior to this, your portfolio could be showing a superlative returns, which means that you have entered at the right time, everything worked very well, and it is showing a very high rate of return. If you are seeing that kind of a performance in your portfolio, going forward, expect the portfolio performance to come down. So you saw a 20% return coming and you suddenly see that your portfolio is slowly drifting down, then you should not think that my fund is not performing, I should exit this fund and move somewhere else. That's the wrong decision to do. It's just a process of portfolio stabilizing over there. The markets are spending time. What you got in the beginning is getting averaged out. Likewise, if your portfolio is not performing to the desired extent as what you thought, probably your timing of entry in the market is wrong. So you're passing through a lull phase and wait for the spikes to come in the market. See, markets spikes will not come every day. Market spikes are rare but very important and the most juicy phase of the market. If you are not invested on the spiky days, then make no mistake, your portfolio will never stabilize or will not show you a return. Only people who are invested on the days when the spikes come will see a great return from your investment portfolio. So if you are invested, normally it takes 3 to 7 years. It could be longer than 7 years, perfectly possible, depends on what happens in the market. See, in Indian conditions, between 1993 to 2004, it took more than 10 years. It's an odd event. Normally, it takes about 3 to 7 years for the portfolio to stabilize and you see a stable return. Beyond that point, it will not change to a great extent. Let's say that you are seeing a 12% on your portfolio. It may drop by 1.5%. It may climb up by 1.5%. It will get into a stable band. So if you are not in that bracket, give it the time it deserves. Point number 7 to look into is how often do you churn? If you are a do-it-yourself investor, this is the problem you might be facing. If you are a very unhappy investor, or if you are seeing your portfolio day in, day out, and you keep checking hourly, daily, and keep complaining, chances are that you keep churning your portfolio. Churning is all about, I exit this fund, move to some other fund. I look at the performance of another fund and move over there. See, when you see the performance of the fund, your mind will think it like a bank FD. If a fund is showing 10% return, your mind thinks that I get 10% return by investing into it. But you do not take into account the time or the behavior of the markets. So by churning and moving into another fund which is giving you 10%, what exactly is your expectation? You start thinking that I'll get 10% beyond that point. No, it has happened in the past. That fund has gone through the yielding process. Maybe that fund too also have to wait for it. If you're a person who is churning your funds very often, make no mistake, you will not get a good return from your investment portfolio. It is obvious, it is decided. So the right thing to follow is select right, put right allocation, put exposure control, take professional assistance, then just sit tight. Give it the time it requires. That time works for your advantage, not moving in and out of the fund. If you are there on the internet, there are countless people who will say, you exit this, you enter there. This is all crap. Point number 8. When you are unhappy with your investment return, first check the published data of returns of the funds in which you are invested. Your portfolio may show a different figure. If you are having two folios of the same fund, let's say that you have got a Sundaram Mid Cap Fund and it is there in two different folios. Two folios started at different points of time. Fund could be same, whereas the CAGR return on these two folios look different. Why it is showing different? It is because of the dates which are changing between the investment date in these two folios. For you to be certain, don't look at the fund performance in your portfolio there. Instead, if you want to check if you are in the right fund or not, check the published date of that fund. You can find that on the AMFi website. You can find that on the company's website. If you are invested through a distributor, your distributors would have given you an access, and there also the fund performance must be visible to you. Always check the published data, which is the standardized input for you. But if you look at your individual portfolio, then it can give you a differing opinion on that particular funds. Point number 9, check your diversification. You should learn the art of diversification. Diversification is a great tool. Diversification is also a double-edged sword. When you diversify, you minimize your risk, you minimize your concentration risk, you minimize your chance of taking a call on something very concentrated and that's not working and your entire portfolio languishing. But diversification also takes away the performance. The more you diversify, the more the performance will go. So it should be, when you try to diversify, there should be an intelligent concentration with a required amount of diversification. If you have the best ideas or where you feel that you will not miss, there should be an element of concentration there, and there should also be a diversification. Diversification should happen over different asset classes. Again, we call it as asset allocation. At the same time, there should also be a diversification into non-correlated things. See, for example, if you are invested in a banking fund and you put 10 different banking funds, that's not diversification. You are in the same sector. So you are putting the risk on individual fund managers. That is what you are trying to diversify. The diversification is, let's say you are in the large cap and you should be in the mid cap, you should be in the small cap or in a flexi cap. Likewise, you can take a call on other debt funds or hybrid funds. That's diversification. So diversification is very general, but you should be intelligent and you should master the art of diversification. The rule to follow is when you build your portfolios, intelligent concentration with the required amount of diversification is the working formula. Point number 10. Many investors do not add debt funds or hybrid funds in their portfolio. Make no mistake, these are very useful. It's just like a balanced meal. Your portfolio must have some debt funds and must have some hybrid funds. When you put this, your portfolio creates happy experiences for you. Remember, the stock markets will not perform all the time, whereas a debt fund performs all the time. A hybrid fund performs all the time because the hybrid funds have debt and they have equity. They could be having gold, they could be having other asset classes like commodities. One or the other asset class is always working. The beauty of a debt fund in your portfolio is it may not give you the same rate of return as an equity fund, but it is a working horse. It always keeps working. Let's say if it is a debt fund is giving you 6% rate of return. It will give you non-stop 6%. It will not stop. An equity fund may not even give you return for 5 long years, but debt fund keeps giving you returns all the time. Likewise, during the periods of uncertainty, if there is some gold in your portfolio, the gold may spike up. During the inflationary period, the commodities which are there in your portfolios will give you a spike up values. So it is very essential that you add both debt and hybrid funds into your portfolio. There is enough data to suggest that increasing equity beyond 60% in your portfolio does not have a great value. We have seen enough of research. Look at the hybrid funds, the aggressive hybrid funds. The aggressive hybrid funds are giving you the same return as that of a large cap fund. How is it possible? The large caps have literally 90-95% in the large cap, remaining 5-10% in the debt funds. An aggressive hybrid fund may have 60% equity and the balance in debt. How can the performance of the hybrid funds be same as a large cap? That has a lot of story to tell. There is no extra return you generate by overloading your portfolio with your equity. By having debt in your portfolio, the volatility will be reduced. If at all, if you compromise on the returns, it could be 0.5%, it could be 1% at the most. So do not overload your portfolios with equity. Be an intelligent investor. Put debt, put hybrid funds also in your portfolio. Dear investors, if you follow these 10 points, there is no grounds for you to suffer from that unhappy experiences of investment. Being prepared, putting up the proper expectation, applying a rational thoughts into your investing creates happy experiences. If you like the content that I have produced for you today, and if it added to your knowledge, please do give me a thumbs up. If you are a person who is watching my channel for the first time, or if you have not yet subscribed for the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon. By the way, before I close, do not forget to share these videos with your near and dear ones, friends and relatives, and on all the WhatsApp groups on which you are connected with. Thank you very much for watching this episode on NRI Money Clinic. I shall be back with you with yet another topic next Friday. Till then, stay safe. Jai Hind.
Press the bell icon for more details and subscribe our channel.